Hi everyone, welcome to week 8 of your Introduction to HIPAA course. This week we're going to finish off chapter 4. And chapter 4 again was all about the security rule explained. So when we think about the security rule, remember we were kind of comparing and contrasting privacy versus security. Security is all about keeping things from the outside world, so to speak. So that's probably the easiest way to summarize security. So the rest of this chapter is going to kind of talk about some of the physical and technical aspects of security. In other words, how to make sure that your private health information is not out there and available to others. So the first part is physical security. And so this includes things like the actual building itself. So if your building does it contain any kind of secure information, how do you get into that building? Can just anybody walk in and access things? And it gets down to even the detail as far as things like filing cabinets, even the very, very small minutiae details of physical safeguards. Another thing that's part of physical, the facility physical safeguards includes disaster recovery. So what happens if there's a tornado, if there's a hurricane and things like that? So it's going to get into that kind of thing. Also, what would happen if there's a fire? So if you have to evacuate the building at a moment's notice, how does the information stay secure even when no one's there? And then it gets into the details of the workstation itself. So when you leave say you leave your desktop and you walk away to go use the restroom, does it lock within a couple of seconds, or can anybody walk by and access the information on your computer, that type of thing. And then we get into the actual technical safeguards. So things like, well, what happens if someone, even if say your workstation is set up so that it locks when you, walk away from it, can just anyone access it? So even if the screen goes blank or, however your security team has set everything up, what happens if you go in to access it? Do you have password protection? What type of password protection do you have? Are your passwords hidden? In other words, when I come back and I type in my password, can someone else see it and then use it the next time when I walk away? That type of thing. Does it keep track of how often I'm logged in and from where? Because keep in mind that access doesn't necessarily happen right there in front of us, right? There's hackers out there. Folks can get into it from outside. Is there any way to access your passwords without physically being there in the building and that type of thing? So those are just some of the technical safeguards that they talk about Encryption is a big one. And then, of course, there's things like auditing. How do we make sure that we are watching this on a regular basis so that, things don't sneak past us, so to speak? So there's going to be things like, how often do you change your password? Are you required to change your password every so often? I know for Vaderite, I have to change mine, I believe it's every 90 days. So, what do you do? What is your password? Is it your dog's name? Is it your child's name? Or is it something a little more complex that someone would have difficulty, accessing or figuring out, so to speak? Again, there's also several true stories this week in the last half of this chapter. They talk about, what would happen if type of situations. And those are really important because we don't necessarily think of those what would happen if situations. On page 95 is probably one of the better examples. This one talks about surplus, selling surplus materials, and the material that was inside those filing cabinets was still, private health information. There was a handful of social security numbers and birth dates that were out there in that particular filing cabinet that were still accessible. So it talks a little bit about, what happened. So think about that. If you are getting rid of even something as simple as a filing cabinet, what do you need to make sure you do? You know, cleaning everything out. How do you dispose of those pieces of paper? That type of thing. So as you go through this week, if you have any questions on the remainder of chapter 4, please make sure that you reach out and let me know. And have a great week.